Hi, I'm John and welcome to the Jigsaw Puzzler. Today's puzzle is one of those puzzles. Do you ever have the experience where you look at a puzzle image and you think, I could do that. It looks a little bit challenging, but I should be able to get that done in fairly good time. That's one of these puzzles. I found this puzzle in an op shop. It's secondhand. There are no pieces missing, and I took one look at it and I thought, I could do that. That doesn't look too bad. A little bit difficult, but not too bad. Well, I was quite wrong. This is quite a challenging puzzle. It's a 1,000 piece puzzle by Eurographics, the very first Eurographics puzzle I've ever done, actually, and I'm quite pleased with the result. It depicts a painting by Pieter Bruegel the Elder, one of two paintings that he did of the legendary Tower of Babel. This is known as the Great Tower of Babel painting. It's in the Kunsthistorisches Museum in Vienna, and the other painting of the Tower of Babel by him is in a museum in Rotterdam, and it's known as the Little Tower of Babel. Okay, in the center of the image, let's have a bit of a look around this image because it is quite a challenging puzzle, more challenging than it appears when I first picked it up in the shop. It's a painting, obviously. There's a large tower, the Tower of Babel, under construction in the middle, and it consists of a mostly completed section here, and an interior core and a section which is under construction, reaching right up to the heavens. Some of the areas down the bottom are a little bit incomplete in terms of their building works, and there's a lot of activity, very, very small, fine detail activity with people building this tower. There are horse and carts dragging materials up to the tower. There are people on it. There are people on ladders, all sorts of elements to show that this is a mighty tower under construction. Along to this side, the right-hand side of the picture, is a port. So we have some water, and we have some ships and a dockyard where goods are obviously being traded, coming and going, presumably coming from afar to be put into the construction of the tower. On this side, there is a village or a town. It's quite a substantial village, even though it's very, very tiny, because there are lots and lots of roofs depicted there in very, very fine detail. So it seems to be quite a populous place. Then there are hills in the background on both sides, and this very varied sky, quite stormy, swirling looking clouds on this side with a very dark patch in the middle, and somewhat calmer, though still quite cloudy, on the other side, taking up probably the top third of the puzzle. Down the bottom here we have a group of figures in close up, one of whom is a king, and this is presumably the legendary king Nimrod, who was allegedly responsible for the construction, or overseeing the construction, of the Tower of Babel. And there are some other people. There are some craftsmen down here, stonemasons. There's part of his entourage, and then just a section of shrubbery, quite dark, bushes and shrubbery here. In the middle, there is a river, or what looks like a river, with other elements dealing with the construction of the tower here. You can see scaffolding in front of arches or inside arches. There are wheels hoisting things up and down. And there are these rows and rows of layers and windows and doors all the way up to the top of the tower. It's quite a beautiful painting. Really rich colours. One of the things that appealed to me was the beautiful colours in the picture. I have seen people post their completed puzzles of this image on the internet before in various jigsaw puzzle groups, and I've looked at it and thought, I would actually really like to try that one. Well, it came up at an op shop and I swooped on it and purchased it. I'm really pleased that I did. However, it was more of a challenge than I expected. Let's talk about Eurographics and their quality for a bit. So I've never done a Eurographics puzzle before, and when I opened this puzzle, there were great sections of it completed in slabs inside the box. Not all of it. There are a lot of loose pieces in a bag as well, but sections of it had not been properly broken down. So I broke it all down first because I want to start from scratch. I want to say that I did the puzzle and not just put somebody else's version together. But I could tell from when I was breaking it down that the pieces held together really, really nicely. Not too tight and not too loose. The puzzle would certainly survive being picked up, and it holds together beautifully. It does have a slightly gloss finish on it, but not too shiny. It is ribbon cut and consists only of the two standard puzzle pieces, the sideways and the horizontal and the vertical, 2 in and 2 out puzzle piece. Quite even, but not so even that everything is frustratingly false-fitting. There are lots of possibilities for false fits on this one, but it does come down to operator error really, rather than a problem with the puzzle. There were a couple of times I had a piece in the wrong spot, or I put it in a wrong spot, and I could tell immediately, and it seemed to fit, but it didn't. All right, so the quality is excellent. Really, really happy with the quality of Eurographics puzzles. I would recommend them based on just my sample of one, and I would certainly look favourably on doing another one. All right, so how did I tackle this puzzle and what did I think? Well, I actually thought when I look at a puzzle image and decide whether I'm going to buy it or not, whether it's new or secondhand, I look at the image and I think, how would I do this? What would my strategy be? Just roughly, not in fine detail, but what would I actually do? Well, this one, often, I pull the edge out, obviously, but I look for areas of colour and texture and shapes and forms that might allow me to more easily separate pieces and put them in groups and do a section at a time. I could see that the sky could be done as its own section. That's pretty normal. If you've got a landscape puzzle with the sky at the top, you can often tell the sky pieces and pull those out separately, so that wasn't a surprise. The blonde stonework of this section of the tower I really thought would be pretty good. This is a dark, much redder section of the tower. Obviously thought that would be okay. There's some water down here, which is quite a different shade of blue to the sky, so very easy to distinguish. And besides, there are lots of things floating in the water, ships and barges and things with cargo on them. So, and it doesn't take up a huge amount of area. And then I thought, well, there are these people down here. These are in quite close up, so I could do those. And then we'd have the different areas of the middle ground and the background that we could put in. That is essentially how I attacked the puzzle to do it. But I have to say that the colours and the details on the painting itself, this isn't a puzzle problem, it's a painting problem, are so close to each other tonally that sometimes it can be really hard to know whether a piece goes in the village on this side or at the dockyards on that side. Whether the green belongs to this band of countryside here or over here or down here. There are lots and lots of areas which are a little bit tricky. And of course these rings of this tower being built, the layers are all very, very similar to each other, tonally and shape-wise, that it does take a little bit of sorting out to figure out where all those go. And then there's this whole section here, which I hadn't anticipated, from the back of the dockyard through the foundations of the tower, and this rocky outcrop here, and this half-constructed section on this side. I didn't expect that to be quite as hard as it was. It's quite dark. The painting itself in that area is quite dark, and it's more difficult to distinguish the variations in colour because there are some of these just painted rock outcrops rather than structures. Down the bottom here, this area here through the middle here with its sort of greenish coloured tones, I could pick out the colours, but it took a while to figure out just where they were because there were so many that looked very, very similar. So I tipped it all out into the sorting trays, turned everything over, full flip, and pulled out all the edge pieces to start with. And I did the edge first. I was missing a couple of pieces to begin with, but that didn't really matter. They are in fact all here. So I put the edge together first, but I also, as I was doing that, pulled out a few other things. I pulled out the sky, anything that has sky pieces on it, just plain sky, sky and clouds here, but I also pulled out any sky piece that had something else on it. So sky plus landscape, sky plus tower. Any of those things, because what I wanted to do was form this line that goes across the puzzle that way, just to kind of section it off. I also pulled out all the blue for the water down here. And then there were one or two other things as well, small things that I picked out along the way. I did the edge, then I did this piece here that divided everything off, and I did the water, because the water was nice and compact. And then I did the sky. Quite unusually, I felt like I was starting this puzzle on the outside and working my way in. And that's actually what happened. It seemed to me to be easier to start with the outside and work your way in to the great tower in the middle. So I did the edge, the sky, the sea, and this border here. And then it took me a little while to decide what it was was going to go on to next. And I decided to pick out the browns, the darker browns and the mid browns that belong to this section of the tower. Overall, there weren't too many of those. Oh, and there were some other little patches of that colour, little tiny buildings, roofs, other bits throughout. So I picked everything out, put these little bits together and just had them floating around, and then did this section here. And that's when I started to become a little bit stuck with where to go next. One of the things that did pop out to me, now this does only involve 3 or 4 pieces, is this gentleman down the front here in the bright golden yellow outfit. So he came together all right. And so I started to piece together, look for the pieces that belonged in this bottom corner. So the larger scale humans and the stone slabs that the stonemasons are cutting to build the tower. And this band of trees in here. All the black pieces, the really dark ones, belong in this section down here. The rest of it doesn't really have black on it at all, only this bit. So I managed to get that and that and that and that without having much else in the middle. So I moved on to doing the landscape section here on both sides. I figured some of them were a bit indistinguishable from each other, so I figured I'd just try to grab them both and construct them both. As it turns out, this side, the right-hand side, is a little bit lighter in colour than the left-hand side. So that did help. The other thing I noticed, and it's very, very tiny, there is what looks like an aqueduct going right across in very fine detail here. And once I noticed that, I was able to go through and pick out all the little pieces that had this aqueduct on it and create a line that sectioned that off there. And then I looked for this really distinctive green colour through the middle to sort of build up from these trees and from the people. Then it was the turn of the village. I really thought, well, I could tell that they were all little tiny buildings, so I looked for all the pieces with the tiny, tiny buildings on it and built that side here. Then anything which looked like it could belong there but didn't was going to be on the other side, and so I built that side as well, right down to the dockyards. So in the end, well, not in the end, at this point, I basically had everything done except the majority, 2/3 of the tower. So everything up here, this section here, right down across the bottom, except this bit in the middle. So then I pulled out all the pale stonework with all the windows, the arch windows and the doors and all of those columns, pulled those out and just spent quite a while piecing them together to figure out which one went with which one and which layer they went on, because there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 distinct layers to the tower here in that colour. So that did take a bit of sorting out. And then I moved on to what turned out to be quite a difficult section here. This part here with this rocky outcrop, very painterly brush strokes here, showing the craggy rock here and up here as well. Because it's a painting, it's quite indistinct. There are no particularly defining features or edges or anything like that. And then there are a few little bits and pieces in here, a couple of wheels which weren't too hard to find and some arches, but that I really felt that I had to slog away at finally finishing this last bit of the puzzle. And then, you know, as it gets down closer and closer, you get fewer and fewer pieces, and it does actually speed up. And finally, I got it done. I didn't time it. I don't know how many hours it took me to do this, but it was quite a lot. I worked on it over the course of a week, after work every day, for a few hours, at least a few hours each day, trying to get it all done. I have done a time lapse, and it was quite a long, it was done in sections obviously, but it turned out to be quite a long time lapse, which I've sped up even more so that we can get through it in a reasonable amount of time on this video. All right, so that's how I got that done. It was a challenge, but it was a really tremendous puzzle. It holds together beautifully, which I'm really pleased about. And being a second-hand puzzle, you know, all the pieces there, just an added level of pleasure for doing this one. I like doing art puzzles. I've got quite a few art puzzles, and I haven't done one in a little while, but this one, very pleasing puzzle to do. Some people I know would struggle with this a lot. All right, so we're going to have a time lapse. So if you'd like to click like, subscribe, and share the channel with your puzzling friends, I'd really be grateful for that. Please make comments below. Always look forward to reading people's comments and seeing what people have to say about the puzzle being presented or puzzles in general. So we'll on with the time lapse, and thank you for watching.